I exposed our nonprofit's Indigenous president as a fraud who stole money and tried to ban me from my office. Now he smears me everywhere. Would be I the a-hole for exposing a covert abuser who embezzled from the nonprofit I founded with friends after they lied about their identity, tried to sabotage a friend of mine and our nonprofit, and tried to steal the nonprofit we founded using a failed attempt to get a restraining order solely to keep me from entering my nonprofit that I founded? I wrote that exact sentence in my notes the day everything cracked. I typed it with shaking hands, fat-fingering nonprofit, because I just walked out of the magistrate's office with adrenaline buzzing in my teeth and a stack of papers that said, in bureaucratic deadpan, that the attempted restraining order against me was denied. I kept rereading the line where it said I was allowed to enter the building my own organization owned. I laughed too loud in the parking lot. It sounded like a cough. If you're reading this because a friend sent it to you with "holy shit" in the subject line, I know. I know how messy it looks from the outside. I know it reads like the plot of a Netflix doc where the episode titles are all verbs. Bait, groom, move, steal, burn. I didn't think I would ever be the kind of person who had audio recordings of myself brushing my teeth, because I was afraid someone would say I threatened them while I was flossing. I didn't think I would ever be the kind of person who says my genealogist in a sentence. But here we are. I run, an Indigenous-led nonprofit focused on missing and murdered Indigenous people. We built it with folding tables and borrowed Wi-Fi, and those burnt-to-hell coffee urns you only see in church basements. The early meetings were held in a friend's shop after hours. We passed a hat to keep the lights on. We were small, but we were stubborn, and we had a clear target, a known serial killer moving through the Southwest, preying on Indigenous kids. You don't need names to understand the weight of that sentence. You just need to picture the shoes lined up by the door that never got put back on. Enter him. When I met him, he had the same kind of charisma people mistake for competence. Loud opinions, quick with names, a lot of I can make a call energy. He had 3 different names floating around. One legal, one he used for social media and press, and one that came attached to an adopted family situation I'll explain later. He said he was Indigenous. He said he was intersex. He said he had worked as a migrant farm worker as a kid. He said a lot of things. I didn't ask him to prove any of it because I'm not a cop and we weren't gatekeeping away anybody who wanted to help. You don't have to be Indigenous to show up with chairs or write grants or drive a truck full of cold sandwiches into the desert. You just have to not lie about being Indigenous while filing paperwork that triggers federal grant categories and treaty holder status, because that is fraud. He was already mid-lie the day we met. I didn't see the hook. Damn, you all need a media arm, he told me that first afternoon, eyeing the flyers I'd laid out. This is all heart, no teeth. It's paper and staples, I said. Teeth cost money. I can fix that, he said like a promise. I've got nonprofit experience, governance, fundraising. I'll get you in rooms. He had a way of saying things that made you feel late for your own life if you didn't agree immediately. He flat out moved me to his town to help, set me up in a room in his house like we were launching something together. He made it sound like an accelerator program, but with his couch and a cat that hated me. He walked me through a whirlwind of we language. We'll incorporate this week. We'll do bylaws. We'll open the bank account. We'll fix the website. We'll pitch those federal grants. We'll get you a board that actually acts like a board. He added himself to our board as a temporary measure. He put his sister, and I'm using quotes because she was his adult best friend who he later adopted legally as his sister to make one of his name changes smoother, into our orbit as operations. He kept the receipts. He kept the keys. He started introducing himself as co-founder. The first time I heard it, I laughed and corrected him. The 5th time, I put it on a list. The 20th time, I had that weird out-of-body sensation where you watch someone peel your name off a door you bought and stick their name over it like a label from a Dymo. We had a friend, call her a brilliant author and artist, Nebula Award nominee, the kind of person who can talk down a room full of pissed-off men in baseball caps by just standing and waiting. He hated her on contact, said she gave him weird vibes, said she didn't respect the work, said she was jealous. He said that a lot. Jealous. It was his favorite diagnosis for any woman who didn't buy his pitch. He did this tight smile when she spoke at meetings, and later he'd do a post-mortem rant about her ideas like he was scraping them off his shoe. The first time he got loud about her, or said, "Get your mouth off my name," without looking up from her notebook, he went silent and smiled like a cut. He'd been elected board president at a large intersex membership organization a while before any of this, waving around the phrase, "first Indigenous president," like it was a sash. I won't name them because they've got their own mess and their own people to protect. But if you've been in that space long enough, you've already guessed. He would say my organization about them too, like he'd birthed it. He bragged, later that he destroyed it, that he pulled the plug because people needed to be taught not to mess with him. I didn't know at the time if he was telling the truth. Who brags about torpedoing a movement? He did, apparently. The lies were both ridiculous and effective. Locals didn't believe him. They'd learned to nod and pivot. But strangers? New arrivals like me? We were the markup in his con. He flattered me into letting him pick the bank. He accelerated things by doing them himself. I looked up and realized our new debit card was being used for gas that didn't match our trips, equipment we didn't own, and a weird number of takeout orders that all had a single bag of ice on the line item. He said the ice was for events. We weren't running events. He said reimbursement. He said fronting costs. He said, "I'll reconcile after the grant hits." He said, "I'm carrying this thing on my back and you're asking me about $50 of Thai food." He said a lot. When I pressed, he'd go limp and wounded. "You don't trust me," he'd say, little quiver. "After everything I'm doing for our people?" "Our people," I repeated. "Say which people." He didn't like that. He didn't like when I said I'd started recording everything, literally everything, because of some very ugly, very racist lies he'd told about me to a couple of volunteers. I stood in his kitchen and said, "I'm telling you right now, I'm recording every interaction we have." And he said, "That's illegal." And I said the state we were in was one-party consent. He glared, paced, muttered, "You love drama." Like I hadn't been the one eating cereal in silence while he fought with his sister about whether to adopt her on paper to help him fix some paperwork in his past. "You're not hearing me," he said. "You've got enemies. I got enemies. We have to circle wagons. You're the one shooting arrows at my friends," I said. "Stop saying we when you mean you." He went for nuclear. He and the sister walked into the local magistrate's office and tried to file a restraining order against me. Think about that. Not to keep me away from them as people, not to keep me away from their home, which the document specifically allowed for reasons I still don't understand, but to keep me away from the building with our name on the deed. They used dramatic language. They said I was dangerous. They said they were afraid. They said I was unstable. They said a lot of things that didn't stick because I had recordings, time-stamped, that showed me at a Safeway buying grapes at the exact time I was supposedly throwing a chair. I know how this sounds. I promise you I wish I were lying. We went to the hearing. I put on the only blazer I own, which still had a funeral program in the inside pocket. The magistrate asked straightforward questions in a voice like a librarian. He went off. He couldn't help himself. While he was supposed to be explaining why I shouldn't be allowed within 50 feet of the door to my office, he accidentally admitted, flat out said, that he'd moved funds around because I wasn't ready to handle money and he had to pay himself back. The room went quiet except for his sister chewing her gum like it owed her money. The magistrate blinked at him like a cat. "Pay yourself back from what?" the magistrate asked. He stammered. He tried words like float and advance. The magistrate wrote something on a pad and set the pen down. The order was denied. I walked out with shaky knees, sat in my car, and recorded myself reading the denial line into my phone like a prayer. That's when I opened a new note and wrote the sentence at the top of this post because I wanted to ask a clean, internet-shaped question instead of screaming. Why be the asshole to blow this up? To email everyone? To warn the world? Because the part that I haven't said yet is I went to people in his past and I started hearing the same story like a chain letter. He'd done it before. He'd pulled the same stunts, pretty lies, fake credentials, identity cosplay, sit in the leadership seat, move money, burn everything when people stop clapping. And worse. Stalking, whisper campaigns, scorched earth. The phrases repeated. He ruined my career. He took credit for my work. He told people I was abusive. He moved to my town to help me. Then he isolated me. He adopted a friend to fix a paper trail. He used my trauma as currency. He looked me dead in the face and said he'd destroy me if I didn't fall in line. Here's the identity part that makes this extra loaded and why I'm talking about it carefully. He lied about being Indigenous. Not, I misunderstood my family story lied. Not, I have a great something lied. We're talking full on. I am from X Nation. Here's my grandparents' name. Lies, with photos he downloaded and a backstory like a workshop monologue. I don't care what he is in the other column. I'm not here to talk about who gets to claim intersex identity. That's not my lane. I am here to say he is not Indigenous. And I say that after sitting with genealogists, plural, from my nation and from the nation he claimed, tracing every branch of his tree until we hit nothing but census records and white folks from Ohio. I watch my Annie run her finger down a page and hum in that way she does when she's both deeply unimpressed and sad for you. 3 names, 1 tree, European all the way down. Confronting him did not go well. I didn't do it alone. I brought 2 board members with me, and I did it in the office with the security camera on. I set my phone down on the table and said, not unkindly, we have to talk about your claims. We pulled records. He laughed first, that ugly high laugh people do when they think you've told a joke in poor taste. You're policing identity now, he said. Is that your job? Are you what? Blood Quantum Squad. I'm saying the grants you're pushing us to file under treaty status would be fraud if your name is on them as a beneficiary, I said. I'm saying you told donors you were Chief's grandson. Chief has no kids. I'm saying, he cut in louder, that I'm your leader and you're being ungrateful. We didn't elect you, one of my board members said. He sneered so hard his face folded. He went after R again almost immediately, like whiplash. She poisoned you, he said. She's jealous of me, and she's jealous of you, and she's jealous of our success. What success? I said. We're broke because you keep moving money to your personal account and calling it a float. You agreed, he said. You told me to front the costs. Show me, I said. Show me the email. He flung a folder at me. It had photocopies of photocopies and a printout of a meme. I picked up 1 receipt, and it was for a $49 bag of ice and $119 of neon cocktails from a bar we've never done outreach at. He'd written fundraiser across the top in Sharpie. You can't just write fundraiser on a margarita bill and call it governance, I said. He knocked the stapler off the table with his elbow and said it was my fault for putting it there. He tried to say I threatened him. I played the audio of us discussing printer ink for 6 minutes. He said I stalked him. I played audio of me singing off-key in the car for 37 minutes because I thought the radio was off. He said I destroyed the intersex organization while he was board president. I played audio of him bragging about teaching them a lesson. He called me an instigator. I said, I'm a founder. He said I was obsessed with credit. I said, you changed your name 3 times and adopted your best friend to move paper, and you're mad. I want my name on the thing I built. He called me a bully. I said, stop stealing. He called me colonizer. I said, okay, show me your grandma then. He threatened to go nuclear. He already had. The restraining order was part of it. The racist lies were part of it. He told people I had a history of violence. And when someone asked for proof, he said, you don't ask a victim for proof. He told a volunteer I hated intersex people because I questioned his purchase of $189 of rainbow lanyards in a town with 67 people. He told our landlord we were behind on rent when we owned the building. He got in a group chat and said I pushed out other Indigenous leaders when the other Indigenous leaders are the ones texting me about how he made them feel unsafe. He wrote a Facebook post the length of a novella, and half the comments were bots. The part where I say I went to the police. Yes, I did. I was not alone. Others did too. I brought the bank statements. I brought the text messages. I brought the screenshots of him switching names mid-thread to agree with himself. I brought the genealogical trees with citations And if you don't think I felt like a complete idiot carrying a banker's box full of my life into a building where the woman at the front desk said, "You can't leave your coffee there," you don't know me. I felt ridiculous and also like I'd swallowed a lit match. The officer who eventually took my statement had the gentle, exhausted face of a man who's seen everything once already that day. He did not promise me anything. He took notes. He asked me to clarify the part about the adoption. His best friend, I said. He adopted her as an adult to facilitate a name change and to create a family tie that would make some of his older claims harder to scrape. "Is that legal?" the officer asked. I said yes. He said, "Huh." He wrote it down anyway. I called the intersex organization. I was careful. I said, "I'm not here to tell you who you are. I'm here to tell you we share a problem." There was a long pause, then a voice that sounded like someone who hadn't slept since 2019 said, "Yeah, we know." We talked for an hour. We found the overlapping lines. I felt stupid for not seeing it sooner, and then I got angry, and then I got tired in a way that made my hands shake. I hung up and stared at the wall until the sunlight moved, and I realized I hadn't blinked in minutes. The thing about running a small org is that the work doesn't stop because your board is on fire. People still call. The mother of a kid we'd been helping called me while I was in the middle of scrubbing his name off her website. "Do you have any updates?" she asked. I looked at the spreadsheet on my screen and said, "We're still pushing. We're not stopping." I meant it. I also mean it when I say I started sleeping with my phone face down because anytime it lit up, my stomach flipped. I stopped telling people to keep the peace. I stopped saying, "Maybe he's just messy." I started saying the words out loud. He embezzled. He defrauded. He lied. He weaponized other people's identities as cover for his own. He went to the court to try to keep me out of a building I bought. He tried to isolate me from my people and cut me off from my work, which is exactly what abusers do, except he did it with bylaws and Facebook posts. He took a cause with actual bodies in the ground and used it as a stage for his costume changes. He deserves to be met at every door he approaches with no. He deserves to be seen by people who can say, "We've read this script and we're not interested." So yes, I started a list. I started building an address book you could use as a blunt weapon. Nonprofits in our region and in the fields he pretends to be interested in next. State agencies that handle charity registrations and grant fraud. Faith communities. Industry leaders. The HR departments at companies he's name-dropped. Former co-workers I tracked down through LinkedIn at 2 in the morning. People in his extended family who still send Christmas letters. Neighbors in towns he doesn't live in anymore. I went on county GIS sites and pulled property records. I went to the library and read the society pages from before I was born because sometimes names echo. I am not embarrassed to say I did that. I am embarrassed that I have to. I can hear the chorus on this part because I've heard it face to face. Isn't that going too far? Won't you look obsessed? Won't that make you the bully? I asked myself those questions so many times I wore ruts in my brain. I kept coming back to the same image. The hallway in our building on a day we'd had 10 families through, shoes everywhere, juice boxes smashed flat in the bin, tape stuck to the baseboards where we'd hung the poster that said "Bring them home." The mothers in that hallway did not care about my optics. They cared that I didn't let the lights go out. And I argued about it like siblings. She didn't tell me not to do it. She told me to do it clean. No adjectives, she said. No monster talk. No evil this or evil that. Just facts. You start editorializing, you give him a place to wedge himself in and pretend you're just mean. So bullet points, I said. So receipts, she said. Dates, amounts, quotes, audio, names, his names, all three. So nobody can say they weren't warned because he used a fourth one that day. She looked at me the way you look at someone balancing a glass of water on a hummingbird. And when you send them to people who can actually do something, not to your old high school group chat, so they can chase dopamine together. We're trying to keep other orgs from getting hit, not put on a play. He did not go quietly. He never does. He started a rumor that I'd called the feds on a marginalized person, and if you're sitting there yelling at the screen that I didn't call the feds, I filed a report with the Charity Bureau, and then I handed what I had to police because theft is theft, you're right. He filmed himself crying in a car, and posted it with a caption about me being a violent colonizer. He DM'd a donor from his personal account asking for rent money because they've pushed me out and I'm homeless, while I was literally getting texts from his landlord complaining about the noise in a house he still lived in. He told the newspaper we'd stolen his intellectual property. The intellectual property was a Canva template with a red handprint and 3 logos he didn't have permission to use. His sister tried to corner me in the parking lot late while I was loading bottled water into the back of my car for a vigil. She kept her voice low and mean. "You're making a fool of yourself," she said. "People are laughing at you." "Then let them laugh," I said, "but they'll have our receipts stuck in their teeth." She said, "He made you. You were nothing before us." I said, "You spelled after wrong." She spit on the ground at my feet like a cartoon villain. I got in the car, turned on my recorder, and said the time and the location and that there was saliva present. We did a board meeting without him. We did it by the book. Someone moved to remove him for cause. Someone seconded. We voted. We documented the reasons. Financial malfeasance, misrepresentation, behavior contrary to the best interests of the organization. We locked the accounts. We changed the locks. We called the people we owed money to and told them we would pay them late because we had to rebuild our books from the ashes of his bullshit. We emailed our volunteers and told them we were here, we were stable, we were not going anywhere. We told them we were meeting with an accountant. We told them to forward any messages from him without engaging. We told them if they felt threatened, we would sit with them in court. He tried to bring the restraining order again with new words. The magistrate looked at the old denial and then at the new pile and said, "We've been through this." I didn't relax. I won't relax. I now carry the sound of a gavel in my spine. "You want the granular?" "Here." He used 3 names. "Let's call them N1, N2, N3. N1 was the government name from Ohio. N2 was the name he used to get elected at the Intersex org. N3 was the adopted family name that gave him a fake origin story. In email threads, he'd sometimes sign N2 and then reply as N3 endorsing himself, then forget and sign N2 again. I have screenshots. On an application for a grant that required Indigenous heritage, he listed a nation and a clan that don't match the one he claims in speeches. We have the PDF. On a Venmo request to our treasurer, he wrote per diems, but the dates line up with a trip to the beach on his Instagram where he tagged a tiki bar. We have the statements. On a call with the Intersex org, he said they needed strong leadership. And then in the next sentence, he said, "I taught them a lesson." We have the audio. I'm not embellishing. I don't need to. When I say I traced his tree, I mean I sat at my Annie's kitchen table while she pulled census records, birth certificates, marriage licenses, obituaries, yearbooks. She circled names with her thumbnail and hummed, and every time we tried to jump branches to where he says his people were from, we ran into the same wall. There is no there. I texted her a photo of the scribbled family tree, and she wrote back, "No wolves in that forest." It didn't feel triumphant. It felt like standing on a stage after the show is over, lights up, seeing the wires on the fake moon we'd been pretending was real. I thought about the other org, the Intersex one, dismantling under the weight of his leadership. I don't know if his brag is true, but I know enough people there were exhausted and bleeding out volunteers by the time he stopped signing memos. He wore first Indigenous president like an outfit to every party, and here, too, people were polite until they weren't. You can only watch so many chairs go missing before you pat your back pocket and realize your wallet is light. I sent the first wave of emails at 2 in the morning because I couldn't sleep and because if I didn't hit send, I never would. I kept it clean, just like her said. Subject line, information you may need regarding N1/N2/N3. Body, dates, roles, linked files, copies of public posts, a brief note that our org is available to answer questions. One sentence about the restraining order attempt that mentions the denial, the specificity about it being designed to keep me out of our building, and his admission about moving funds. One sentence about the genealogical evidence and that we have documentation from both nations. That's it. I didn't call him a monster. I didn't say he smelled like a wet towel. I didn't include the fact that he once told a grieving mother she should do the work on her own time because he had a brunch. I saved that for when I punch a pillow. Some people wrote back instantly, like I'd thrown them a life ring they didn't want to admit they needed. Some wrote, "We've had similar issues, thank you." Some wrote nothing, which is fine, because silence is not the same as ignorance. A state agency sent me a form with a box labeled fraud that made me laugh because of how enormous and tiny the box looked on the page. An elder I respect wrote me a one-sentence email that said, "You're doing the right thing. Be ready to pay the price." The price is people thinking you're too much. The price is people who like gossip more than accountability, snickering that you're obsessed. The price is sleeping in fits because your body learned to wake at any unfamiliar noise. The price is your name in someone's mouth in some bar you'll never walk into, in a tone you can hear. The price is the tight smile from the polite volunteer who thinks all conflict is equal. The price is knowing you've added your voice to a chorus that says no, and that you will be called rude for it by the person who tried to finesse the keys out of your pocket. Here's where I say something I don't like saying. I have a mean streak. It keeps me alive. It's not cruelty. It's just the part of me that refuses to pretend we're all on the same team when we're not. If you've ever sat with a mother with a missing child and told her you will not stop, you will not be gentle when gentleness is a lie. You will not be polite when politeness is a leash. You will keep your receipts. You will use them. He's still out there, changing outfits, switching names, trying doors. I know because people forward me screenshots. Because a man in neighboring county DM'd our public page to say, "Hey, is N2 the same as N3? Because an organizer I love called me to say he showed up at her event with a backpack like a kid on the first day of school and a notebook with my name written on the cover and a heart. Because he filmed himself on live, crying again, and saying he was being hunted, which is a word I will never forgive him for choosing. I don't know what you wanted when you clicked this. Maybe you wanted a neat answer. Maybe you wanted me to say I played nice and he went away. Maybe you wanted to shake me and say, stay quiet. The work matters more than being right. The work is why I'm loud. The work is why I hit send at 2 in the morning. The work is why I sat in a kitchen with my Annie and a pile of paper and a pen with somebody else's church logo on it and drew a tree. The work is why I carry a stupid little recorder like I'm my own parole officer. The work is why I wrote that misspelled, messy sentence and then did the thing I was afraid of looking like an asshole for doing. So would I be wrong to go to so much trouble to warn people about these very toxic, very harmful people? Put it this way. Every time I think about the too far argument, I see the hallway with the shoes. I see the juice box sticky on my palm. I see her looking up from her notebook and saying, "Get your mouth off my name," without raising her voice. I see a magistrate put his pen down. I see a form with fraud in a little box. I see a spreadsheet with my organization's name spelled correctly and his name's crossed out. I see a mother staring at me because I said we wouldn't stop, and I hear my own voice say it again, tired and mean and honest. We won't. He told someone last week that I'm obsessed with him. I'm not. I'm obsessed with keeping the lights on. I'm obsessed with making sure the next person he targets has a Google result that makes them pause long enough to ask a question. I'm obsessed with the plain facts because they are more than enough. He used 3 names. He lied about being Indigenous. He adopted his best friend as an adult to grease his own paperwork. He called himself my co-founder and then tried to keep me out of my building. He moved money. He bragged about destroying a different org. He tried to isolate me from my people. He told racist stories about me to strangers. He went to court and admitted enough out loud that a clerk raised an eyebrow. He did all that on camera, on paper, with timestamps, with receipts. That's not obsession. That's a file folder. I'm going to keep warning people. I'm going to keep answering the phone. I'm going to keep doing the thing we built this to do. And if that makes me the asshole in his story, fine. He never tells the truth anyway. I don't have to worry about his plot. I've got my own, and it doesn't end with me handing over the keys.